Hello, Gator Country friends. I'm Cassidy Hill here with Nick Delatorre at SEC Media Days, and we are now halfway done.
Yeah.
Which means we still have a whole nother half to go.
Hey, we're not old and beaten down yet.
Exactly.
This is nice. We're in the air condition. We're talking football.
Young, got a lot of life in us, and a whole lot of Starbucks in us by now. Florida went yesterday, day one. Jim McElwain's first SEC Media Days, Jonathan Bullard's first SEC Media Days, Brandon Powell's first SEC Media Days, and really first foray into the media at all. Vernon Hargreaves was the only repeat amongst the whole Florida contingent. But you were in a lot of different rooms with them. Kind of touch on what you heard from them. It's talking season. It's not actual play. But is there anything that Florida fans can get excited from?
Yeah, we'll start off with Jim McElwain. Again, we talked about it before with his opening press conference. He won the press conference. Mm-hmm. And for a coach who hasn't had even a chance to win a game yet, it's nice to see him win the press conference. He's a confident guy. This was really his first big introduction to the national media, and I think everyone got a good sense of who he is. And really the biggest impression he made was his quote that we have freedom of choice, we don't have freedom of consequence. And of course that's going back to the issues that we asked about with Florida State, off the field issues, behavioral issues. It seems like these things, not just in college football, but in the NFL, keep popping up with players getting in trouble off the field, and how that starts to tarnish programs, tarnish a brand, but really don't hit women. Steve Spurrier said that
Seems
today.
Pretty simple.
Don't hit girls. If you hit girls, you're not going to be on our football team. So it was nice to see Jim McElwain take a hardline stance against those off-the-field issues.
For the past few years, it seems like SEC Media Days has become about what's your favorite movie, what's your favorite animal, what's your least favorite stadium to play in. But the coaches have really been hit with a lot of hard questions this year, and Jim McElwain was not an exception. Do you feel like he held himself enough to a standard that Florida fans can breathe a little bit easier about the way their coach can handle some stress?
Absolutely, and he kind of has a folksy way of doing it. He's got seemingly a joke for any kind of situation. He's not necessarily ducking all of the questions, but he kind of has these little icebreakers with a little joke, and then he'll jump into something. But I think what really the point that he's getting across right now is that he's just a genuine guy, and I think that's what he's conveying to everybody right now.
Now, what about the players? Brandon Powell, like we said, this is really his first foray into media at all, and said a lot about him that the coaches chose to bring him as such a young guy. How did he hold himself, and what can Florida fans expect from him?
He's a quiet guy, but I think you saw a lot of quiet confidence from him. And it's a guy, last year we kept hearing, Brandon Powell's got this package, we're going to use him this way, we're going to use him this way, and he said it himself. Never
Didn't happen.
He touched the ball 31 times. He had 16 carries, 15 receptions. For a freshman, that's okay, but 31 touches for a guy that the coaching staff kept saying he's going to be featured this week. We need to get him the ball. Well, he didn't really do that. Jim McElwain has said that he can be our X factor on offense, and that's with guys like DeMarcus Robinson and Jake McGee coming back. Those are the only guys coming back, but Brandon Powell will have opportunities this year, it seems, and to bring a sophomore who's only done media one time before this into this circus where you're getting those crazy questions you mentioned before, I think it shows the confidence and the faith that the staff has now.
Now, Jonathan Bullard is about to be a senior, but this was his first SEC Media Days as well. It doesn't mean too much, but he decided to come back. He got asked a lot about that. Did he make a good enough case that fans can feel comfortable about his play going into his last year?
Yeah, I think I think the big thing is Jeff Collins hasn't really changed much. So it's not like on offense where it's another year, a new playbook again for everyone on offense, a new scheme, new things to learn. Jeff Collins really kept everything the same, terminology, language. So the guys on defense aren't really having to adjust to much. And Bullard is going to be able to play more defensive end. He was a kid who got moved as a sophomore inside the defensive tackle. Having played defensive end his whole life, he never really had to worry about a center and a guard double teaming, didn't have to worry about getting chipped. And so these are things that he's adjusted to. It's made him a more versatile player where they can probably play him at 3 different spots on the line.
They talked a lot about moving him outside.
Yeah. So he's going to be doing everything from hand in the dirt, outside of defensive end, inside defensive tackle, standing up, kind of doing a little role that maybe Dante Fowler did last year. So they're going to move him around, and I think that is what's going to help him with the NFL, because he's not a big stat guy as far as sacks. He never has been. He wasn't in high school, and he hasn't been at Florida. But when you can show on tape to scouts, hey, I can play 3, 4, 5 spots. You don't need to sign 2 guys to fill these spots because I can fill those. And that NFL teams with 53 spots on the roster are always looking for somebody who can play and fill multiple spots.
And then Vernon Hargreaves, he came last year.
He'll be on the NFL roster too.
Pretty soon. And he talked about that he thinks about that. He didn't shy away from it. A lot of guys do. He said, hey, it's my motivation.
Right.
But we saw a lot more of his personality, the kind that we always seem to see on social media and not in person. He really opened up yesterday. What does that say just about maybe how he's going to be on the field as well, too? Does he seem more loose and relaxed this year than he has in the past?
In my opinion, he's always been a confident kid, and that comes from, growing up as a coach's son, growing up around, the Miami locker rooms with Ed Reed and guys like that, those Miami teams that were super confident, borderline cocky, where swagger was invented. So he's always had that kind of confidence that was instilled in him at a young age. But I do see him kind of loosening up. Maybe last year, as a sophomore, having to take on a leadership role, he was kind of feeling that out, felt maybe a little awkward being a younger guy and having older guys look up to him. Now as a junior, he's being looked to as a leader again. I think he's come to terms with that, come to peace with that, and that's not really weighing as heavily on him anymore.
He'll be a lot more fun to watch, even more so than he has been, which seems weird to say. But then we had different teams today as well. Tennessee, who all came through, Mississippi State.
Dan Mullen had his Yeezys on
Dan Mullen
today.
was killing the shoe game. He definitely beat Nick here.
That's not true.
Sorry to tell you. You won the sock game, though. He has donuts. But Tennessee, that's a team that Florida will face pretty early on, and we've talked a lot about how that could be a swing game for both teams.
Right.
The rest of their season could go as that game goes.
That's really a table-setting game for both teams. It's not the first SEC game. For a while, that was both teams' first SEC game, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. And the winner of that game was always in the driver's seat in the SEC. Tennessee's been down for a while, haven't beaten Florida in a decade. That's incredible. It's still a rivalry game, and the fans feel that. Tennessee, they know about it. They're going to hear about it all week, that week before Florida. But that game for both teams, because Florida's young, Tennessee is young. They returned 17 guys. Age-wise, they're young, but those guys had a lot of experience last year. They had 5 brand new offensive linemen last year.
Wow.
So Tennessee is young in age, but veteran in experience. So I think that is something that a loss in that game for Florida. Now you're thinking, well, we were the team to lose that streak. A loss for Tennessee, it kind of, Butch Jones said today, is that kind of derailed us last year. That was a game that they thought they could really win. Almost did, losing by a point to Florida in Knoxville. They had the big checker kneeling, and that kind of set them in a tailspin. I think that's the same thing you can see this year, that the loser of that game will have a hard time getting the wheels back together and get things rolling. I think the loser of that game sees things start to snowball. And after that, for Florida, is Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, Georgia.
It doesn't get any easier.
Not get easy after Tennessee. So Florida really needs to get a win and build confidence and get that momentum rolling into that pressure cooker gauntlet part of their schedule.
Josh Dobbs was in here today, quarterback for Tennessee. That's a smart guy. I mean, we talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
If it's anything he can turn into a math equation, he can figure it out. That's something especially quarterbacks will do with the defense. I mean,
right.
Florida's defense is supposed to be one of the best in the nation, but is Josh Dobbs a serious threat to this team?
Yeah, an aerospace engineer. Not too many Division I football players are aerospace engineers. He is a guy that the team got better. If you look at Tennessee, struggled in the first quarter of the season, got a little bit better in the second quarter, and then better and better. And not many teams see that steady progression throughout the year. And the team looked much better once Dobbs was put in. They planned to redshirt him, not play him. Once he was put in, I think the offense really started to click. The offense started to get better for them. So they're riding that momentum. And the team, the players are really talking about how having one guy, having one quarterback, a leader, defined before the season has helped them in their workouts, has helped them throughout the offseason. That's not a luxury that Florida has right now. They don't know who's going to be the starter. But Tennessee said in the past, it's kind of been divided. We didn't have, a true leader. Now that is Josh Dobbs, they're following him. He's in front of them, leading them into battle, and they're confident in him.
Now, tomorrow we get Bama, who Florida won't have to play this year, barring a trip to Atlanta. And then the next couple of days, we get Georgia, we get Ole Miss, we get LSU. What do you expect to hear from them concerning the Gators?
Well, I think I'm really interested to see what LSU has to say about the DBU conversation.
I'm sure they'll probably even have a little bit more to say than Vernon did.
Yeah, well, Vernon kind of just said, give it to him.
Yeah. Vernon said at the end of the season.
My favorite quote was, at the end of the season, we'll see. And then we'll get a little bit from Missouri as well. Missouri's the back-to-back SEC East champion. So you look at them, and then you got to think, are they the front runner?
Right.
Matty Mock comes back, very solid team. I think they just have a lab where they make big, fast defensive ends. So Missouri might be the team to beat, and we'll talk to them. They're a team that kind of gets overlooked every year. They win. They come in, and everyone thinks they're going to get slaughtered, put up a good season, and they're a team that has dominated Florida. 2-1 against Florida. The one time that Florida beat them was, of course, back in 2012, the year that they went to the Sugar Bowl, and you needed the Josh Evans interception in the end zone at the end of the game.
Remember that play well.
So it's Missouri's a team that probably can go into each season with a chip on their shoulder because they're getting overlooked. But they're winning football games. So I think Missouri and LSU, I'm very interested to see what those players have to say. Missouri, and those are both away games for Florida, too.
Back-to-back.
Back-to-back weeks, flying to Baton Rouge, and flying to Columbia, Missouri is not an easy place to get to. You got to fly into St. Louis and take a bus over.
And it's cold and it's weird.
It is cold.
We're not used to that down here in Florida. Well, we'll have more coverage as the rest of the SEC Media Days goes on. I'm sure Florida will get talked about a lot. New coaches, a lot of teams on their schedule. And we'll be right here with you through it all.
And at the end of the week, Cassidy will be giving out awards.
Yes.
For best dress, awards. And the rest are secret.
We will take suggestions, though.
Okay.
So tweet us suggestions. So I was going to make a joke, and it just didn't pan out. Anyways.
You should leave the jokes to me.
Thank you, Nick. We will be here with you through the rest of the week for SEC Media Days. For GatorCountry.com, he's Nick Delatorre, and I'm Cassidy Hill.